For this video, I wanted to clear up some confusion I'm hearing about the output routing on the Behringer X32 and the Midas M32. So let's break this down and try to simplify things. As we get to the output routing on the console, what we see here on the left are the XLR outputs on the rear of the console. If you're on mixing station, it's the same. The actual XLR outputs are on the left. For X-Edit, it's also the same. The left column is the output section. As we look on over to the right, these are what feeds the outputs. These are our various sends. It's important to remember these consoles have 25 buses. These 16 mix buses do not have to all be assigned to the 16 XLR outputs on the back of the console. It's all totally user configurable. In fact, in the factory default configuration like we're seeing here, it does not have these 16 mix buses or channel sends all assigned to the XLR outs. XLR outputs 15 and 16 are assigned to the left-right main bus. The last four channel sends, 13, 14, 15, and 16, are assigned by default to the first four slots of the built-in effects rack. By default, the first four effects slots are set up as send and return effects. Using channel sends 13 through 16 as effect sends makes perfect sense for this. It immediately makes XLR outputs 13 through 16 available to be fed from other sources, like the left and right main outputs. And for example, a couple of matrix feeds could be at outputs 13 and 14. Meanwhile, this default configuration leaves lower number outputs and mix buses available for monitor sends. Most people will want monitor 1, mix 1 on bus 1 and patch to XLR output 1. Mix 2 on bus 2, patch to XLR output 2, and 3 to 3 and so on. This makes patching, mixing, and troubleshooting straightforward. But it's all user configurable. You might not even have monitors running from the console, and so those outputs could be fed from any of the 25 buses. Whatever happens to make sense for your particular application. But for many people, many of these mix buses and outputs will be feeding monitors. And for what it's worth, you can pretty much use the term mix bus and channel send interchangeably. In fact, it might even be better to use the term channel send to understand the signal flow better. Now that we're talking about monitors, let's discuss another aspect of this that seems to be tripping some people up. Many people know that monitor sends from a front-of-house console should be tapped at some point pre-fader. That way the monitor mix doesn't change when the channel fader is used. But when people say that, they mean the channel sends. You want the channel sends that are feeding monitor mixes to be tapped at some point pre-fader. So, to know what you're looking at here, pre-fader and all tap points showing above it are all tap points in the signal chain that come before the channel fader. They're all pre-fader tap points. Post-fader is of course after the channel fader. Subgroup is also another option that is post-fader. Meanwhile, these are all pre-fader tap points from this point above. But in the output routing section, it's an entirely different thought process. When you're in the output routing and you have the option of pre or post fader, that is asking if you want the XLR output itself to be pre, before, or post, after the fader. In other words, do you want a master fader on that particular output? Let's look at a diagram to show this, because this is an important distinction in the overall signal flow. We're in the output routing section here. This is our output fader. This is our XLR output. If we set it to post fader, then our physical XLR output will be after the fader. We then have a master fader for that output. If we set it to pre, then our physical XLR output will be before the bus output fader. Therefore, the output will get its signal before the signal even passes through the fader. We won't have a master fader for that bus output. On the console and in mixing station, we have buttons or encoders to choose pre and post fader. In Xedit, we right-click and you choose the color codes to see our settings. The plus mute option allows the mute to work with a pre-fader setting. And of course, the mute will naturally already work with the post fader setting. The default is post fader, and that is typically correct for almost all typical uses, and especially monitor outputs. Do not confuse your channel send tap points with your bus output tap points. They are two completely different places in the signal chain. The channel sends are on the input side of the signal chain. The bus outputs are at the total opposite side of the signal chain, at the output side. As I talk about outputs on these consoles, there's something else I think I should mention. On the rear of the console, you'll see a couple of outputs marked monitor/control room. And you'll see a couple of XLRs marked left and right. These are not for stage monitors, nor are they where you connect your front of house amplifiers. In fact, if you do connect there, you're going to be in for a surprise when you solo a channel. These are for control room/engineer monitors. In typical usage, these mimic what the headphone output is doing. I have other videos that delve into monitor setup, and you can check out this playlist to find those. If you're not familiar with the fader flip button, I recommend you check out this video because it can really help speed up your workflow. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below. There are links in the text below. Check out the other videos. Thanks to all the patrons, and thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.